Hello everyone and welcome to my book talk. Today I'm going to be talking about The Grace Year by Kim Ligget. It came out in 2019, so it is a very new book. And today I'm going to talk about it from the perspective of educators. What are the pros and cons, some of the benefits of potentially bringing this book into the classroom? Also, please ignore my hair for the duration of this video. We are in the midst of the COVID epidemic, so I haven't been able to get a haircut since like February. So bear with me on all of this going on. Thanks. So because this is kind of on the merits of its educational value, this will have some spoilers. However, this book is jam-packed with plot points and things to do. So although I'll be spoiling some of the stuff that's happening in it, I will actually be leaving out quite a bit of the key characters and key events just for the sake of brevity in terms of summaries and that sort of stuff. Even if you do watch this review, the book's not going to be fully spoiled for you. There will be some twists that I'm not going to mention that you will still get to be surprised by. And I'm going to be upfront about this. I did enjoy reading this book, but I have a lot of mixed feelings. There were some good aspects and some bad aspects, but I will try and see both sides of the issues and kind of consider this book holistically and the benefits that it could bring to the classroom, even if it's not something that I would personally want to read again. So as I mentioned before, The Grace Year came out in 2019, so it is less than a year old. The copy of the book I have, which I only bought in February, is actually still a first edition, so they're still on their first initial round of printing. That's kind of how new the book is. How me and my peers like to describe it is as a mix between The Hunger Games and The Handmaid's Tale. This book is an action book, it's a mystery book, it's a thriller. Obviously, it's dystopian if it's got those Handmaid's Tale, Hunger Games elements in it. Really, there is a lot going on in this book. The Grace Year is set in the fictional Garner County. Garner County is a community that believes girls have magic, the magic to control men and kind of woo them away from their wives. As can be imagined, because of this belief, it is a highly patriarchal society. The men have all of the power, and the women have basically no say over what they do in their life. Their husbands are chosen for them. If they can't get a husband, their jobs are chosen for them. They have no power. They can't go out places alone very often. They're not allowed to do certain things. It's very male-controlled. So the Grace Year exists so girls can actually expel their magic in the wild. So the Grace Year is a year-long event. All 16-year-old girls that year are sent to live in an encampment in the woods, like far away. It's about a 2-day walk from the county, to dispel their magic, to make sure that when they get back, they won't be able to control the men with their magic and their powers. Before the Grace Year, the girls are actually betrothed before they head off. All eligible men, so mainly it's 16-year-olds, but anyone whose wives have died or were accused of heresy and executed, they are allowed to choose a Grace Year girl to be their wife. So the eligible men barter with the girls' fathers and actually choose who their bride will be without any say from the Grace Year girls. Any woman that isn't chosen, any girl that isn't chosen, is sent to the labor house to do backbreaking labor, manual work to keep the society running. In the event that a girl was chosen by a man, but she dies during the Grace Year, the man then gets to choose a new girl after the Grace Year is up. So you're probably wondering why I called this Handmaid's Tale meets Hunger Games, and why I just mentioned that a girl might die during the Grace Year. Well, the Grace Year is an incredibly violent event. No one knows what happens there except the girls who have been before, but they're forbidden from talking about it. But every year when the girls get back from the Grace Year, they are scarred. Many of them are missing, presumed dead, or missing and completely unknown. The reason it is so dangerous is because there are people called poachers. These poachers actually exist to steal these girls, kill them, and bring their body parts back for the black market. It's believed that these girls' body parts contain magic and that they can be used for the benefit of the different people on the black market to get special powers that these girls have. So this book in particular follows a 16-year-old girl named Tierney James, and she is the typical I'm not like other girls protagonist. That sounds a little bit mean to say, but it's very true. There are about 20 to 25 girls who enter the Grace Year, and of those 25, she is the only one who's not interested in marriage. She knows how to build things, she knows how to use a knife. She is the typical special chosen one protagonist, without actually being a chosen one. She only has these skills because her father taught them to her, and I do think it is a little bit of a stretch. She is actively the only girl who doesn't want to get married, which again seems kind of unconvincing in a society that's so repressive towards women. She is special. So Tierney has a childhood friend, Michael. They've known each other since they were little kids, and they were very close when they were younger. However, now that they've grown up, that friendship has been strained. It's pretty obvious from the text of the book that Michael likes her, but she insists from the very beginning that she's not interested in marriage and that she doesn't like him. So shockingly, on the day in which these girls are introduced to their future husbands, surprise, Michael decided to marry Tierney. He gave her a veil. He bartered with her father. They are engaged by the standards of the society. And Tierney is pissed. She made it very clear that she did not want to get married, and she feels betrayed by her friend for enforcing this upon her. But she does not have time to complain, because as soon as she finds out it's him, she's off to the woods to start the Grace Year. So the main antagonist of this book is a girl named Kirsten. Although she does not play as big of a role as you would initially expect, she is the cause of a lot of the strife in the book and a lot of the troubles for Tierney. Again, she is 16. She's going to the Grace Year with Tierney and the other girls. Tierney has a lot of doubts about whether the magic exists, but Kirsten enforces continuously, you have magic, we need to release magic. So I mentioned before that the walk to the encampment is about 2 days long. And on that journey, at least 2 girls die. I can't remember if there was more, but I know for sure there was 2. One thing that Kirsten does really well is she convinces the other girls that are still alive that she is responsible for these deaths because those girls crossed her. So throughout the book, these girls all believe that Kirsten can control them and that she can make them do things. So something that I want to make clear before I keep going, the reason the poachers don't approach the encampment is because they believe it's cursed, and that if a poacher steps foot on the sacred land, that they will face retribution. So once they get to the camp, Tierney immediately starts to do handy things. She tries to build rain barrels. She's talking about rationing food. But over time, things start to go crazy. Everyone starts acting weird. Everyone's getting paranoid. Through a series of events that I'm not going to go into at this point, Tierney is actually kicked out of the camp by Kirsten. This is in part because Tierney does not believe in Kirsten and she doesn't want to follow her. She finds a water source on the top of a hill. She spends some time in the woods, but eventually she does go back to the camp because she's worried about some of the people there. She wants to check on them, and that's when stuff really hits the fan. Kirsten confronts her. Kirsten looks deranged. She isn't fully sure that she's seeing Tierney. She thinks she's a ghost. And so to test out whether she's real or not, Kirsten actually grabs an axe and axes Tierney in the shoulder. So now that she's been axed, obviously she is pretty wounded. Her shoulder is bleeding out. So she leaves the camp because her life is in danger and she needs to escape. And she feels that her only chance of safety is leaving the encampment completely, and she had previously found a hole in the fence. So she decides to go to the hole and actually completely escape the camp. She goes under the fence and she's out of the sacred encampment. Once she's out of the camp, a poacher actually pursues her onto the ice. She takes the axe that was still on her shoulder and she shatters the ice underneath her. But the poacher fishes her out and begins to nurse her back to health. Tierney doesn't fully understand what's happening. Her wound actually got incredibly infected, so she's out of it for a very long time. She believes that the poacher is just nursing her back to health to then kill her more viciously. However, this is not fully the case. The poacher, who we later find out is Riker, is actually nursing her back to health to save her. Riker's family had gotten sick, and Tierney's father, a doctor, had taken care of them and saved them and brought them back to life. Therefore, Riker felt as if he owed her father a debt.
One thing that I didn't explain here that I should have is that Tierney finds out from Riker that the poachers are paid by the county. That is in part how Tierney's dad met Riker,
and he promised to keep her alive during the Grace Year. So it is at this point where the book shifts. Tierney falls in love with the poacher, Riker. One day she was looking at him, she kind of realized he was handsome, and then suddenly they have feelings for each other. I personally think it comes a little bit out of the blue, and it's not super well built up to, but it does happen. They do fall in love. One day, though, Riker and Tierney do get caught by Riker's poacher friend Anders, and Anders actually threatens Tierney's life and forces her to leave. When she reaches the camp again, she finds everything is a mess. The girls are barely alive. They are all deranged. Things have gone completely off the walls. So eventually what Tierney puts together is that the reason the girls went crazy is that the well water which they were drinking was poison. She eventually convinces them to drink the fresh spring water in the woods that she found, and she starts to get them back to healthy. She nurses them back to health. This is close towards the end of the year, so eventually the time is up. The guards come back to get them, and they go back to camp. But surprise, when she reaches the county again, Tierney is pregnant. All of the men in the county want to kill her as a heretic because they assume she's been violated by one of the poachers. However, Michael, her fiance, does stand up for her, and he claims that Tierney was visiting him in his dreams. So he claims that the child is his through Tierney's magic and through dreams. So Tierney is protected. The book eventually ends when Tierney gives birth, and it is left up in the air whether she survives the pregnancy or survives the birth or not. And it's up to you to decide what you think happened. So that was just a really rough outline of things. I know that was super long, but I did leave out even a lot of important parts. I didn't mention anything about Gertie. I didn't talk about Hans. I didn't talk about the revolutionary. So there were a lot of things that I did not mention that are, while important to the book, did not feel important to this discussion. So now let's get into some of the discussion about whether this actually is a good book to use for the classroom. The Gracier does have a lot of important themes. Revolution, feminism, gender roles, equality, religion even. There's a lot of deep themes that could be used in this book, and you could pull a lot out of it examining it like that. Going along with that, it could be used as a replacement for something like The Handmaid's Tale, or it could be used as a companion piece. It does have a lot of literary value that can be drawn out if you're willing to put in the effort to find those moments and find those things about it. But it does have a lot of value to it. Additionally, this has been a very well-received book. It has very high ratings on pretty much every book review site. People really enjoy it. So you're not going to face a lot of people saying it's a bad book. It has been very well received by critics. This book also has a lot of symbolism and a lot of motifs. There are some motifs with the red ribbon that the girls have to wear. Girls in each different stage of their life wear different colored ribbons. The Gracier girls wear red ones to represent sin, I believe. There's a symbolism of growth. There are a lot of things that you could do with the literary elements of the book. It is very literary, even though its subject matter might not seem that way. It's also a very engaging book. As I said, there's lots of mysteries that you want to solve. It is pretty action-packed for about half of the book, I would say, which can be really engaging, and you are drawn in. The mysteries aren't obvious what the solution will be, so students are probably going to be engaged in trying to figure out what the mystery is before they are revealed. As I said before, this book talks on a lot of important themes, so it's something that could be tied into a lot of modern day issues. You could tie it into the Me Too movement, you could tie it into consent issues, feminism, equal rights, what society should look like if it's equal. You could even tie it into issues of religion, as the idea of girls being magic is tied into the religion of the people in the book. So it has a lot of connections that you could use to bridge to other topics or modern subjects. Finally, this does have an audiobook available, so you can, if you have students who are blind or have other reading impairments or disabilities, there are audiobooks available which can make it easier accessibly. One of the first and more minor cons of the book is that it just has a very weird pacing. It takes about a quarter of the book before the Gracier starts, so you don't actually get to the Gracier encampment until about page 85. Then, about halfway through, the momentum of the Gracier and what's happening with the Gracier stops once she meets Riker. So she meets up with the poacher around page 200, and she doesn't return to the camp until about 280. Half of that section is her just recovering, and the other half is her romance with Riker. And while 80 pages doesn't feel like a lot in a 400-page book, it really did seem to drag, and that's not even including the time of Tierney just in the woods. So there is a good portion of the book where you are not with the other Grace Year girls. So depending on the interests of your students and depending on your interests, that might be really frustrating to them. That is not as serious of an issue, but these next 2 points are really where you're going to have to really think about what you want to present to your students. The Grace Year is a very violent book. It describes a lot more in detail about dismembering, and it talks about the girls' body parts, and it describes some death. It is not the most descriptive it could be. There are some vague language and all this and that, but it is covered in violent themes. So even if you think it's okay, depending on the age that you're teaching, you might face pushback from parents or administrators just saying it's too violent of a book. Even more seriously, you'll have to take into account the themes of sexual assault in the book. The book does not have any described rape scenes, so I will give it that. You don't have to read a rape or anything along those lines. However, there are implications about the commonness of rape in the society, and then there are actual described scenes of sexual assault, so unwanted sexual touching. They're not always directly sexual in nature, but there's a lot of unwanted touching and things that could be potentially triggering for students. And again, you could face pushback from administrators or parents, but mostly I would worry about the potential of triggering a student. So if you do decide to read this, you're going to want to make clear not just the themes, but when those things might happen so students can be aware, or simply choose not to read the chapter or the pages where it happens. The last point is one that is less serious as the one before, but is something that needs to be taken into consideration. Because this is such a new book, it could be kind of expensive to get class copies. When I purchased the book, there was only the hard copy available, and according to this, it was about $17 US. So if you had to buy a class set, that is really expensive. You might not have the budget to buy a new book. Now, for me personally, and because I didn't fully enjoy the book while reading it, I would say the cons outweigh the pros. For me personally, I probably would not teach this book in my class, despite the fact that I'm designing a fictional lesson around it. I think it has a lot of issues, and I think there are better books if you wanted to do a discussion on sexual assault. However, if you did want to use it in your classroom or you wanted to suggest it to a teacher that you have, I think there are a lot of valuable aspects of it. I don't think there's any shame in using it in a classroom. I just personally would not want to bring it into mine. If you found my summary interesting and you are interested in the Grace Year, I would still recommend reading it. The things that I just listed off that I didn't mention, all of those have their own twists with them. So there will still be a lot of surprises that you won't know about going into this book, and it could be really interesting for you if you liked the description that I gave. This can be a good book for personal use. You can recommend it to your students, even have it in a class library. Maybe just have a couple warnings with it. But overall, I can't say I don't recommend the book. It was fine. I didn't hate reading it. There were a lot of parts I really liked, but some of the negatives just do outweigh the positives for me. I hope you enjoyed my book talk. Do check out The Grace Year if you enjoyed it, and have a good day.